In this world, there are diverse races, and among them are those who are blessed by the gods of light. Among these are the elves, the dwarves, and the humans. However, there are also those who are blessed by the darkness. These are the demons, who, despite possessing a significantly smaller population, are individually far more powerful. Both factions divided the vast continent of Lindor into the east and the west, where they battled for thousands of years until the most prudent demon king took command, causing the situation to calm down. Nevertheless, this was merely a fleeting peace. In the 5th month of the year 2826 of Genesis, the peace was disturbed by a large-scale attack orchestrated by the new Demon King. This event was denominated the Great Invasion, which resulted in many sacrifices, and in the 4th month of the year 2827, the greatest empire of the human kingdom, known as Gargan, was ultimately destroyed. The humans, left without any other options, made a desperate decision by gathering all remaining forces to attack on a united front. They sought the opportunity to infiltrate and directly attack the Demon King. While a massacre was occurring on the outside, the heroes infiltrated the interior of the Demon King's castle in search of an opening. During their advance, several companions had to sacrifice themselves so that the objective could be fulfilled. Before entering the Great Hall, the main hero ingested a strange substance to augment his powers, an act that his companion lamented briefly. Once inside, they observed a very strange crystal, but as they approached it, they were suddenly attacked. Before the main hero could perish, his companion Urza sacrificed herself, and in doing manner, she managed to protect him. On the verge of collapse, the hero stood up for his final battle. He then advanced against the Demon King, who demonstrated great superiority by launching a vast quantity of elimination spells against him. This is an unstoppable high-ranking spell that destroys everything it encounters in its path. Realizing the gravity of his situation, the hero decided to give his life to release the power of his jewel, in addition to his companion and his sword, vowing that he would follow her until the end. Once he released the power of the sword's jewel, he became imbued with a massive amount of energy and advanced unstoppably against the Demon King, praying to complete his objective as he pierced through the enemy's body. However, the Demon King planned to take the hero with him to the grave, piercing his chest in return. In the end, the Demon King faded away while the hero thought that he had finally managed to complete his objective. Regrettably, he was unable to protect the lives of his friends, and now he too would face his own end. But before he vanished, the aforementioned crystal began to glow intensely. With his last remaining strength, the hero stood up and advanced toward it. Once he grasped it, a magic circle appeared on the floor, and after a great flash of light, everything vanished. He ended up awakening in the bed of his own home. Finding everything very strange, he wondered what was happening. Upon looking out the window, he could not believe that the previously desolate landscape had been transformed. He was then interrupted by his companion Liz, and it is here that we discover our protagonist is named Kyle. She was a bit worried and approached to ask if he was alright. He simply embraced her, thinking that perhaps everything had been nothing more than a dream. Liz became quite nervous, and both ended up falling onto the bed. She was completely embarrassed and, becoming irritated, pushed him off her. Immediately afterward, she delivered an absurd blow to his stomach, leaving him knocked out. It was then that Kyle realized that if he could feel pain, it meant that this was not a dream. Thus, upon moving his sheets, he found the crystal from before, understanding that he was definitely not dreaming. After reflecting for some time, he understood that perhaps this gem had taken him back to the past. At a certain moment, he felt very hungry and headed to the kitchen, where he was surprised to find a tremendous banquet waiting for him. He did not hold back at all, eating absolutely everything he saw. For this reason, a little later, his companion Saren was shocked to see that the hungry youth had consumed everything that was there. While observing him, Kyle thought about how, until recently, they had been fighting together. To find out where he was, he asked for the date, and Saren replied that it was the 24th day of the 5th month of the year 2823. Kyle understood that he had returned several years into the past, and that specific day was his birthday. Saren mentioned that since he had eaten everything, he could consider that his birthday present. Some time later, to clarify his doubts, Kyle decided to ask a certain person about magic regarding traveling to the past. He then entered a type of underground library, where he was surprised to see his mother, which caused him to remember a tragic scene involving her. His mother mentions that it is quite rare to see him there, and he responds that he came to ask something about magic. This is significant because there are very few archmages, even in a kingdom as vast as this one. And even among those few, he doubts that any possess more knowledge than she does. His mother becomes quite moved by his word. A while later, he questions whether there is any magic that allows one to return to the past. His mother responds that such a spell exists, although it is very obscure, and it can manipulate time itself. However, she explains that it remains merely a theory since no one can actually utilize it. It requires an immense quantity of magical power. Even if the most powerful mage in all of history used their entire mana reserve to cast this spell, it would likely fail. Kyle then asks what would happen if a magical object were used instead. His mother replies that this would be quite interesting, as the object could serve as a catalyst. Nevertheless, she maintains that it would still be impossible, as a single person would need thousands of years to accumulate that much magical power. She notes, however, that through a ritual that sacrifices lives in exchange for magical power, it might be possible. Somewhat curious, his mother asks why he wants to know about such things, and he claims he read about it in a book. His mother is not entirely convinced by his answer and informs him that even with the ritual, it would not be plausible, as it would require sacrificing half of the continent. At that moment, Kyle recalls all the corpses that were scattered in the Demon King's castle. His mother then comments that no object exists capable of containing such an immense amount of magical power, but we know very well that one does indeed exist. As she searches through one of her books, she reveals the legendary heart of the divine dragon, which could house such an absurd quantity of mana. She explains that the ancient magic king of Shalis utilized the immense power of the heart of the divine dragon, allowing his kingdom to prosper for over 1,000 years. However, when the power of the gem was exhausted, the entire kingdom met its doom. Kyle's mother comments that if one possessed the heart of the divine dragon, it would be possible to store that great energy and return to the past. She mentions that this object was lost over 1,000 years ago, but she has no idea that he currently has it in his own pocket. His mother then mentions that she is quite happy, as it had been a long time since they had conversed for so long. She notes that ever since he stopped training with the sword, he has been avoiding her. Kyle apologizes to her, and after setting the drama aside, she mentions that he seems a bit more mature, as if he had come from the future. This makes him nervous, but his mother says she was only joking. She warns him that she is going to eat something because she is starving. However, upon discovering that her gluttonous son ate everything, she is shocked. Despite this, she remembers it is Kyle's birthday. Much like Saren, she says the breakfast can be considered his present. In another scene, while observing the sunset through the gem, he wonders what the Demon King would have wished to fix in the past. At that exact moment, Lies appears. Without wasting time, he apologizes for the occurrence in the morning, explaining that he had a very strange dream and was a bit affected by it. Lies asks if, in his dream, she happened to be dead. Feeling somber, he responds that she was, and she understands why he acted that way. Although she notes it does not justify such bold behavior, she decides to forgive him since it is his birthday. Just then, Kyle remembers their village, which is very close to the demonic realm and was the first to fall after the invasion. His beloved Lies lost her life in that attack, and after losing her, he swore he would have his revenge. Lies, somewhat worried, asks if he is alright since she notices he is acting strange. He reassures her, saying everything is fine. However, in his own thoughts, he reflects that the peace they are currently living in will last only 3 years. Therefore, he must take action now so that in the future he can prevent the tragedies that are destined to happen. He declares that no matter the cost, he will take it upon himself to change history, leaving Lies a bit confused by his strange declaration. During the night, Kyle takes it upon himself to write down everything he remembers will occur in his notebook. He wonders what he should do now, because even if he warns others about what is going to happen, no one would believe him. Nevertheless, he cannot remain idle and takes up his sword to get to work. The following day, Kyle wastes no time in training. He visualizes the Demon King and faces him in mental combat. He is essentially performing high-level image training to prepare himself. He attempts to utilize his magic and realizes that he now possesses much more magical power than before. However, upon attempting to use his magic, he quickly discovers that his current body cannot handle the burden. While he struggles through his mental battle, both Lies and Saren observe him with a degree of concern. Until only a few days ago, the indolent Kyle had no desire to accomplish anything in life, as he intended to live quietly off his family inheritance. Now, however, He appears highly motivated. At that moment, Seren's mother, Leela, appears and inquires about what has happened to Kyle. They inform her that he has changed significantly lately. She comments that if a change is this sudden, it might be due to a woman. This causes Lies to panic. She approaches Kyle directly and begins to strike him. The poor man is confused and asks what she is referring to, but Lies continues to punish him physically until he begins to feel unwell. Later, she prepares a meal as a form of compensation. Now that everyone is gathered, Kyle takes the opportunity to ask what kind of people possess enough influence to alter the landscape of the country and other nations. His mother mentions that to influence a country to such an extent, individuals like the high priests, the divine mother Quali, and the hero Rodolph would be necessary. This hero defeated the Demon King 300 years ago. Kyle analyzes his options. A high priest is out of the question, and becoming a king is even less likely. Therefore, his only remaining alternative is to become a hero, someone who can influence his own country and others. He now possesses a clear goal, though his companions observe him with apprehension, thinking they should not take their eyes off him. At night, Kyle dedicates himself to his studies using the vast collection of books his mother gave him. Seren enters the room, restless upon seeing that Kyle is striving excessively to become a hero, mentioning that it is by no means an easy task. Kyle asks what is required to reach that position, and Seren responds that the answer is obvious. He needs power. However, Kyle clarifies that power is not everything. It is also necessary to possess virtue and a spirit of sacrifice, as heroes assist others altruistically. Furthermore, embarking on adventures is not inexpensive. Another primordial factor is connections. If important people grant him special treatment, his name will become well known. Seren begins to worry about all these speculations and plans, but Kyle is determined. He asserts that, in addition to everything else, he will also need luck, but not ordinary luck. He needs to be capable of finding people in distress so that he can help them and become their hero. Seren, apprehensive, asks if he intends to commit some act of madness, but Kyle guarantees he should not worry. He does not plan to cause problems simply to solve them later, but he will do everything within his power to reach his objective, even if he must act in a cunning or unconventional manner. Seren questions the reason for such haste in becoming a hero, noting from Kyle's expression that this is not a baseless desire. Kyle confesses that he has his own motives, although he cannot reveal them at this time. He simply hopes that Seren will trust him. Seren responds that he will do everything possible to remain by his side, and then he leaves the room. Kyle reflects on how advantageous it is to possess a good memory, as he remembers all the incidents that occurred in his past. The following day, he informs Leela that he is going to depart. She asks if he has already informed his mother, and he responds that he has. His mother was weeping quite a bit while saying goodbye to him. Leela then requests that he take her son along as well, so that he might do something useful for a change. Kyle confesses that he already intended to do so, and thanks her immensely for giving her blessing. Poor Seren complains, as his own opinion was not even taken into consideration. Later, Kyle tells Lies about his trip, informing her that he will depart in 2 days for the capital of Maeld. There, he intends to gather everything necessary to undertake his true journey. Lies asks if she can accompany him, but he responds that she cannot. She complains that he is taking Seren while leaving her behind, guaranteeing that she will not be a burden. However, Kyle responds that he is certain her mother would not want her running into danger. Furthermore, he himself does not wish to expose her to peril. Even so, she continues to insist. After Kyle silences her with a kiss, she remains quiet and surprised. Kyle comments that as soon as he returns, she will be the first to hear from him. She asks him to promise that he will return safe and sound, and he makes his promise. After this romantic moment, they head to the city to do some shopping. While walking through the market, Kyle perceives the presence of his former companion, Urza. Without hesitation, he approaches her, remembering their moments of closeness in the future where she had revealed her true name. In a lapse of concentration, he calls her Exes, the name she had entrusted to him in the future. Upon being addressed this way in the present, she is startled and attempts to attack him, demanding to know who he is and how he knows her true name. Kyle restrains her, realizing she would cause a public disturbance, and proceeds to put her to sleep. As he holds her, he reflects that he never imagined finding her in that specific location. However, he forgets that Lies is standing right behind him. Irritated, she warns him that he has no right to touch the young woman, regardless of how attractive she may be. Lacking a better response, Kyle Kyle mentions feelings that she does not yet understand. Lies then declares her intention to accompany him on the journey regardless, as this way she can prevent him from behaving inappropriately. Later, at his home, Kyle formally introduces himself to Urza. Nevertheless, she demands that he stop with the nonsense and explain how he knows her true name, since only her parents and she herself are aware of it. Kyle understands that he cannot yet reveal that they fell in love 4 years into the future. Therefore, he asks her to simply trust him, promising to explain everything at an opportune moment. Urza responds that she does not intend to trust a stranger. With no other alternative, Kyle proposes a pact of trust, ensuring her that he will not reveal her name to anyone else. She is surprised to find that he is familiar with such pact. He explains that these agreements used to be made with spirits. In the name of a divine spirit, the invoker offers their true name to a human to seal the pact. Kyle assures her that he will neither reveal the name nor make ill use of it. Urza asks if he is aware of the consequences of breaking the pact, and he reveals his knowledge that it would result in his death. This makes Lies nervous, but ultimately both parties reach an agreement. The detail is that performing this pact requires waiting until the full moon, which will take approximately half a month. She warns him that he will not be permitted to leave the village during that time, but Kyle responds that this will be a problem, as he is set to depart the following day. On the day of departure, he says goodbye to his mother, while Lies demonstrates that she does not intend to leave him alone for even a second. Kyle's father wishes him a good trip, though Kyle seems not to remember who they are until Lies reminds him. Thus, he says his goodbyes, and the four of them begin their journey. As Urza does not intend to let him depart while knowing her true name, as they advance, Lies asks Kyle if they were not headed to the royal capital, noting they are walking in the opposite direction. He responds that it will no longer be necessary to go there, as his new companion is an invoker. Consequently, they are now heading to Mount Zungarge to traverse the magic dungeon and obtain the treasure. However, his companions lament, seeing that their leader seems to believe in fairy tales and, moreover, purchases maps of dubious origin. Kyle asserts that the map is authentic, though they remain skeptical. When Urza examines it, she realizes the map is real, as it utilizes a technology that cannot be replicated. With her opinion, Saren decides to believe him. The problem remains that the dungeon is massive, which would require a significant amount of time to reach the treasure. Kyle announces that he has an infallible plan. They will excavate beneath the dungeon to reach the treasure directly. While it is not a bad plan, it will take a long time. However, it is the safest method since the dungeon is filled with traps. Kyle cannot help but lament slightly. He wishes to become a hero, yet there he is, working like a madman. However, it is Urza who complains the most, as she has been tasked with invoking spirits to act as miners. Still, she is somewhat satisfied since she is the one giving the orders. At the end of the day, the group enjoys an excellent meal. Urza asks Lies if she hunted the bear using traps, and Lies responds that she actually used her own hands, leaving Urza surprised. Later, they enjoy a pleasant bath thanks to the spirits Urza invoked for that purpose. During their conversation, Lies tells Urza she should not worry about Kyle, as she knows he will not misuse her name. She trusts him and knows that although he is hiding something, it is certainly not with ill intentions, and he will reveal everything at the right time. Urza decides to trust him. While relaxing on a rock, Lies notices that Urza has a heart-shaped birthmark on her backside, which leaves Urza quite embarrassed. On the other side, Kyle tries to prevent Saren from attempting to spy on the girls. Days pass, and while Kyle is excavating alone, Urza approaches him, asking directly why he desires to become a hero. Since Urza does not fully trust him like the others, she observes the rings he wears and asks if they are part of his training. Kyle reveals that the rings increase his weight by 20% to 30%, as he is determined to enhance his physical conditioning. When she questions why he pushes himself so hard, he simply replies that it is a complicated matter. Finally, they reach the treasure room and are marveled by its immensity. Saren wastes no time, running toward the riches and celebrating amidst the gold, while Kyle asks the ladies not to fall as low as him by letting themselves be corrupted by money, jokingly commenting that Saren's sacrifice was necessary for the team. While they collect the coins, Kyle advances to another chamber in search of the sword that accompanied him in his past life or his future life. In this case, there, the entity manifests its true form, congratulating him for reaching that point. However, Kyle hurries to silence it so the others do not overhear. He makes it clear that the entity does not need to introduce itself because he knows it very well. It is the ancient sovereign of the nameless king, Chalice. In its prime, it created a copy of its personality and knowledge. Kyle reveals that he bypassed all its traps and trials by excavating directly to that location, but notes that it is now ideal to pass the final test and draw the sword. The entity questions how he possesses such knowledge, to which he replies she will know soon enough. Upon wielding the blade, Charlize reads all of his memories and asks if everything she saw is true. He confirms this and adds that he also possesses the heart of the divine dragon. They are suddenly interrupted by his companions, and Kyle asks Charlize to just go with the flow. When they enter the room, he feigns ignorance, mentioning that it is an intelligent sword, the legendary Charlize. Later, Charlize is seen eating cookies, enchanted by the flavor. After explaining the situation to the group, she comments that if Kyle were not worthy, she would have activated the final trap to collapse the labyrinth. However, since she finds him interesting, she grants her blessing for now, allowing him to use the sword at will. Additionally, they are allowed to take the dimensional bag connected to that space, which is necessary to transport the treasures. Saren questions why she doesn't talk about him instead of Kyle, but Charlize advises him to keep his opinion to himself, leaving the poor young man feeling undervalued once again. Some time later, the group is in the city, where Saren has to ensure that the small Charlize does not wander off looking for food everywhere. Soon after, the group goes in search of high-quality equipment to prepare for combat. The merchant asks if they have a recommendation, reminding Kyle that new customers must pay a deposit. The fee is 10,000 galdos, but Kyle delivers 5 Charlize gold coins, which proves more than sufficient. The surprised merchant invites them to view the inventory, where they meet Phoebus, the shop owner. As he welcomes the boys, Charlize observes a collection of swords and asks if they are works by Malines. Phoebus mentions she has an excellent eye, but the little one begins to claim that fame went to Malines' head, and it wasn't a big deal, noting that whenever she criticized her work, the artisan would start crying. Phoebus finds the conversation strange, but Kyle silences her, claiming she just says nonsense because she lives in her own little world. While she observes an armor set manufactured by Magma and quiets down to eat her cookies, Kyle decides to purchase the armor, given its physical and magical resistance, as well as protection against heat, cold, and poison. This armor is top tier. He informs the girls he will equip it right there and suggests they choose something they like. Moments later, Kyle emerges fully clad in his new gear, and the ladies are also equipped. While Saren tries to flirt with someone and ends up rejected by everyone, Kyle requests all available healing potions from Phoebus, as well as offensive class magic stones specifically to defeat reptilian-type monsters. Phoebus is impressed by the volume of the purchase, but it is no problem for Kyle. In the end, the merchants are fascinated. Having made an excellent sale that day, Kyle informs the group they will depart the next day. Saren wastes no time looking for someone to flirt with, while the girls go for a stroll. Charlize also wishes to go shopping, but Kyle detains her, as he needs to talk. At the inn, he questions if it is possible to change the future. She explains that the subject is quite complex, as by traveling through time, he has ended up in a new world. According to her theory, time is not linear but branches out like a tree. His soul has simply been transported to another branch, and the proof lies in the fact that he used the heart of the divine dragon as a catalyst, bringing it with him to this new world. Since it is a new world, history can be different, although changes might not be immediately noticeable. The Great Invasion will inevitably occur if they remain idle. However, if they interfere, they can create a distinct trajectory. Kyle comments that the theory is sound, but reminds her that the stone is with him, and there is no other Kyle. Charlize presents another hypothesis. In dark magic, there is a concept of soul fusion. This is essentially a malevolent method to increase magical power by uniting two essences. Since power is typically determined at birth, the ancient kingdom of Charlize investigated ways to strengthen it, but the experiments failed. However, if there are two dragon stones, it means his soul from another world fused with the Kyle of this world. This would explain why his magical strength is vastly superior, enabling him to use high-tier magic in the future. When Kyle asks about the side effects of this fusion, Charlize admits she does not know since he is a unique case, but she offers to help him. At nightfall in the girls' room, Liz asks Urza if she is sleepy. Urza replies that she enjoys the full moon, so Liz decides to go to sleep. Urza reflects that while she initially doubted this journey, she is now starting to enjoy the experience. Liz has proven to be a good girl and Saren is, at the very least, funny. Meanwhile, Kyle remains an enigma. Though she no longer senses ill intentions from him, she feels embarrassed hearing Liz talk in her sleep, mentioning that Kyle belongs only to her. Suddenly, Urza remembers they were waiting for the full moon to perform the trust pact. On the other side, Kyle is training accompanied by Shali, who mentions that this type of training did not exist in her era. Kyle affirms its efficacy, but admits it does not replace real combat. Observing the sword, he praises it, noting that although he has used other mithril blades, this one is on another level. Shali's reveals that the sword is not actually mithril, but before she can specify the material, they are interrupted by Urza. She seeks Kyle desperately to perform the trust pact. He says he is tired and asks to postpone it, but she refuses. She has already waited a month and will not wait another, as her true name is at stake. With no other choice, Kyle accepts. Urza prepares the magic circle, reflecting that she never imagined performing such a pact with a man she has known for only 2 weeks. Upon finishing, she orders Kyle to position himself and begins the ritual, calling upon Muna, the spirit of the divine moon, to guide them. She asks Kyle if he swears not to reveal or tarnish her true name. Upon his oath, a pillar of light emerges, and suddenly Kyle kisses Urza. Surprised, she pushes him away, questioning his actions. He responds that last time they kissed at the end, asking if that wasn't how it worked. She clarifies that they had never made a pact before, and that such a gesture is a step towards something much more intimate. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Kyle tries to distance himself from the accident, but Urza uses the magic circle to invoke a salamander to punish his behavior. The next day, the group continues their journey. Liz asks why the two of them look so exhausted. Kyle mentions it was an unfortunate accident and asks Urza why she is still with them since the pact is complete. She responds that since he knows her true name, she won't leave until she discovers the reason why. Kyle understands and allows her to stay. Meanwhile, Saren mentions he is also exhausted, and Liz teases him, saying it's likely because he spent the whole night trying to pick someone up and failed, as everyone rejected him. Liz then asks Kyle why they are going to Arkan. To mislead her, he mentions that Shali's has premonitory powers and claimed they should go there. A bit confused, Liz decides to believe him. A few days later, they arrive in the city just in time for the visit of Princess Mylna. Upon seeing her, they are surprised by her beauty. She appears to be a sweet and gentle young woman, leading everyone to think she is a wonderful princess. Kyle, spotting the escort, remembers the captain's name is Sentos. Shali asks if she is the princess they must save, and Kyle reveals that she is destined to die in 2 days. Later at the inn, he explains to Shali that a hydra will attack the princess on the way to the village of Zanes. According to what he heard in his past life, the incident was considered a tragedy caused by the princess's own imprudence. However, he suspects there is something wrong with the entire story. Shali agrees, suggesting they may have used the hydra to cover up an assassination, especially since rumors regarding her brother, Prince Cairnes, circulated after her death, as he would be the primary benefactor. The fact that Cairnes is also in the city makes everything even more suspicious. Kyle's plan is simply to take advantage of this incident to make a heroic appearance at the exact moment the princess is in danger, thereby saving her life and initiating his epic journey. The challenge will be making this rescue appear to be a mere coincidence. Just then, Saren appears, commenting that he could not make contact with the princess. Kyle asks why he is seeking her out, and Saren responds that he has found his soulmate and needs to protect her like a knight in shining armor. Kyle laments having the same idea, but explains that the danger is real since Shali's predicted the attack. Saren sees this as a golden opportunity and decides to follow the princess, claiming that pursuit is his specialty, and it truly seems to be, as the man is quite the lecher. Days pass, and when the princess departs the city, the group follows from a distance to avoid the royal guard. Shali utilizes her powers to transform into a falcon. In this way, she can observe the carriage from the skies and inform the group of its location from above. The ladies are impressed by the utility of the sword, while Saren laments not being able to use such an ability for spying, truly a lecherous thought. When questioned if he intends to spy on bathrooms, he confesses he tried, but Kyle stopped him. Urza breathes a sigh of relief, thinking her secret is safe, but Kyle absent-mindedly mentions the heart-shaped birthmark. An embarrassed Urza questions when he spied on them, while Saren accuses him of stopping him only to spy alone. Kyle is saved from explaining himself when Shali warns that something strange has happened. The coachman stopped and began attacking the guards. Kyle mobilizes rapidly. At the carriage, he intercepts the traitors before they can activate a strange talisman. After immobilizing them, Saren confirms the princess is unconscious. Suddenly, the group is surrounded by hellhounds. They eliminate several, but the quantity is excessive, and the carriage reins have been cut, preventing escape. The ground begins to tremble as the Hydra approaches. Kyle orders Saren to protect the princess and asks the ladies to accompany him. but he ultimately decides to face the Hydra alone while they deal with the Hellhounds. Urza invokes a salamander to incinerate the beasts, while Shawley's questions Kyle on whether he can defeat the Hydra. He claims to have defeated a 3-headed one before, but is surprised to see this one possesses 8 heads. The combat will be very difficult, but Kyle takes advantage of the creature's slowness and uses his dragon armor to nullify its poisonous breath. Using ice and explosion talismans, he manages to blast away some of the heads. However, the beast's regenerative capacity is superior, and the heads regrow rapidly. Realizing he needs to strike at the root of the problem, Kyle uses his acceleration magic to open a hole in the creature's chest. He manages to insert several explosion runes, and even though he is thrown against a tree, the runes detonate, destroying the creature completely. Shawley's praises the strategy. Although Kyle admits the technique leaves him exposed, the group defeats the remaining Hellhounds and reconvenes. Kyle is unharmed but covered in blood and remains, causing the girls to distance themselves due to the strong odor. After bathing in the river, he returns, and Saren informs them that the princess was drugged, as were her herbs. Urza applies the antidote while Saren shows a bag used to attract the beasts, confirming the princess's death was no accident. Meanwhile, in Arkan, Prince Cairnaz prepares to send troops. Princess Mylna finally awakens, and Saren tries to promote himself as her savior, but Lies silences him. Kyle introduces himself, stating they were travelers passing through the area. Upon regaining her senses and assessing her situation, Mylna asks if they are between Arkan and Zane. Kyle confirms this, but Shawley's alerts them that a large troop from Arkan is approaching. When Kyle mentions that the Royal Guard Knights are coming to protect her, the girl despairs, asserting that they must flee immediately, as Captain Sentos is actually the one who wishes to kill her. Mylna orders her servant to burn the bodies to gain more time to escape. She then requests that Urza drive the carriage and asks the youths to board so she can update them on the situation. Before departing, Saren throws the aforementioned bag away, thinking that some magical beasts would considerably help them gain time. They begin their escape rapidly, feeling pressured by the time factor. Meanwhile, Kyle wonders why Sentos tried to end the princess's life. She thanks them for saving her, and when Kyle asks if she is certain Sentos is the one behind the attempt, she confirms it, stating that her brother is the one pulling the strings. Kyle finds it hard to believe, but the princess relates that she saw him sneaking around at night after they had drugged her. They intended to keep her sealed and place her in a carriage so that the beasts would later devour her, making the event appear to be an accident. She was already aware of her brother's ambitions, but since he was incompetent, she knew he could never accomplish such a thing alone. However, with Sentos in the equation, everything changes. The woman at her side mentions that she should not say too much, and Saren, observing her, notes that he had seen her before. She was the young girl who delivered flowers to the princess in Arkan. She tries to deny it, but the princess comments that he has a sharp eye, explaining that it was all a prepared performance, as one must act boldly to win people over. She informs them that she trusted Sentos, but that it was a great mistake. He is a highly skilled captain appreciated by the people. Normally, she is escorted by Kilrin, the captain of the 5th Guard Company, which is composed exclusively of women. However, due to their charisma, they are often summoned for ceremonies in the capital, which is why on this occasion she had to be escorted by Sentos. She admits she should have been suspicious upon seeing him accompanied by her brother. For Kyle, it is difficult to believe Sentos would do such a thing, but if the princess says it, it is true, and now Sentos has become his enemy. Given the situation, since the princess remains alive, they will be blamed for attacking him, and will be considered mercenaries who murdered the guard. She tells them this because she wants them to be aware of the facts. Now that they are all in the same boat, they must survive at any cost. The princess asserts that once they make it out alive, she intends to reward them. Kyle responds that he desires neither rewards nor status. What he seeks is a good reputation. Mylna eventually agrees, although she considers it a very strange request. Later, the group devises a strategy. Mylna mentions that Kilrin will arrive in Arkan the following day, and if she does not find her there, she will look for her in Zane's. Therefore, they must gain time until she arrives. The detail is that on the way, they will end up encountering the second company. Facing a situation of numerical equality, Saren proposes they stay in Arkan, but Kyle responds that this is not viable since Sentos and his subordinates would take it upon themselves to silence the entire village. Although dangerous, the best option is to return to Arkan, as thousands of people live there, and they would not be able to silence everyone. Furthermore, they can regroup with the 5th company. Mylna asks what they will do if they run into the guards, and Kyle calmly responds that if that is the case, they will face them directly, leaving her somewhat confused. Some time later, Shawley's, returning from the skies, informs them that she does not see Sentos with his soldier. Knowing that Sentos is not present, it is the ideal moment to plan a direct attack on the 2nd company. The youths then begin to pull out a brutal quantity of magic stones, leaving the princess surprised to see they possess so many. Lies then hands some healing potions to the princess, warning her to use them in case of emergency, which leads the princess to ask what they really are. Given their high-quality equipment, Kyle simply responds that they are hero candidates who happen to be passing by. On the other side, in Arkan, the prince reprimands Sentos for his failure. He orders Sentos to mobilize and finish her off, but Sentos responds that the vice captains are already in pursuit and that he must remain to accompany the prince. If Kilrin arrives in Arkan and does not find the princess, she will report to the king, and the prince would then have to take responsibility for everything. Enraged, the prince orders him to eliminate his sister as soon as possible, and Sentos responds that he does not intend to disappoint him. Meanwhile, the group follows their plan. Upon spotting them, the soldiers prepare to attack the carriage, but Shawley's, from the heights, begins attacking them with explosive stones, successfully clearing the way. As they advance through them, Urza uses her spirits to enhance the explosions. After breaking through, the vice captain orders a count of how many men are still standing. Having escaped the immediate danger, the youths rejoice that they finally have the resources to stay well equipped. Although the plan was mediocre, the result was very good. However, a little further ahead, the carriage wheel becomes damaged, forcing them to continue on foot. Lies carries the princess and the others, while Sildonia informs Kyle that only 30 soldiers remain. With this in mind, he tells Urza that she and the others must return to the city, since someone must stay behind to protect the rear. But Urza refuses, as he would have to face 30 royal guards, and if he does that alone, he will probably die. Kyle asks her to calm down, stating that he will take care of them. Urza feels frustrated and tries to say something, but Kyle informs her that he will be the one to take care of them. Surprised, she asks what he refers to, while Kyle clarifies that he will be in charge of keeping the guards under control. When Lies reunites with them, Kyle asks Urza to summon Zephyr. Kyle tells her to hurry, as time is short, and Urza uses her magic, applying the Zephyr skill to them to increase their speed. They then depart quickly, leaving Serum to his own fate, while he cannot believe he was left alone. Some time later, we see how he waves a white flag begging for his life. When the soldiers approach, he tells them that everything was Kyle's fault, who left him in that place and fled, showing them a bag of money and informing them that he can hand it over if they want, since he knows the entrance to more underground dungeons. The guards only observe him in a pathetic manner. While one of them informs the vice captain that the princess has escaped, the vice captain orders them to end his life. Although Serum continues begging for forgiveness, the vice captain decides to execute him, and the poor guy was left behind to die. On the other side, Urza asks Kyle if he is sure of what he did, since they ended up massacring the poor Serum, but Lies clarifies that, compared to Kyle himself, Serum is much stronger. It is at that moment that we see how he decapitates the vice captain's head, while commenting that the most logical thing is always to eliminate the strongest first. The soldiers are shocked by the scale and execution, while Serum decides to remove his training bracelet. Now, with his body much lighter, it is time to begin his massacre. He goes out killing everyone, cutting people in half, making sushi. He does not care at all, and this right here was a very good twist. The guy was simply a monster. Meanwhile, Kyle tells Urza that every time Serum disappears, he does so to practice with his sword. Although he lacks magic energy and his personality is terrible, when it comes to the sword, he is a true prodigy. He surpasses even Kyle by a wide margin. Furthermore, he never interrupts his training, as he always carries gravity bracelets. And when he fights, he shows no kind of mercy. No one would like to have him as an enemy. What makes him truly dangerous is his personality, as it causes enemies to lower their guard. Urza asks if he only acts to distract the enemy, but they respond that the acting represents only 10% of the rest of his real personality. The fact that they left Serum in that location makes Kyle regret it a little for the soldier. It is then that we see Serum informing the soldiers that he has already become bored. After all, his mission was to entertain them, not to kill everyone, informing them that he surrenders. Furthermore, since they no longer have horses, they will not be able to reach the princess. Therefore, if they plan to do something, they better hurry. The soldiers question whether they should continue fighting, thinking it is not worth fighting against this monster and ending up dead. The soldiers accept his word and decide to leave. However, the young man ingests a healing potion and then launches explosive runes against them. He gets rid of all the soldiers in a very brazen way, and after finishing everyone off, he comments that in truth he has no intention of leaving anyone alive. The guy is far too insane. On the other side, Sentos realizes that someone is interfering with his plans and decides to mobilize, leaving some guards to protect the prince. Sildonia notices this and warns Kyle that Sentos is on the move. Unexpectedly, Sentos attacks Sildonia and warns Kyle that he hit her. Such power and precision at this distance are worthy of admiration. Kyle orders the princess and her followers to hide, in order to then reunite with Serum. Although the princess asks if he is sure that he will be able to fight against Sentos, since he is the most powerful knight of Shidark, Kyle responds that he would have preferred to avoid the confrontation, but that he has no other alternative. However, the princess observes him in detail, commenting that it seems he already knew Sentos from before. Kyle decides to remain silent, and the princess understands that right now is not the time for discussions. Therefore, before departing, she bows before Kyle, declaring that her destiny is in his hands. Sometime later, Sentos eventually finds Kyle and questions him if he is the one assisting the princess. Kyle confirms this and asks why he came alone, still having so many soldiers at his disposal. Sentos responds that he does not wish to sacrifice any more of other people's men in this entire conflict. After all, he alone is enough to finish everyone. Since they have reached this point, Kyle asks him to surrender, as he would not like to kill him, and he states that he will request a pardon from the princess for him. However, this only makes Sentos feel indignant. Kyle questions him about why he wants to eliminate the princess. Nevertheless, Sentos responds that this is not something someone who is about to die needs to know. Both then begin the combat, appearing to be very evenly matched, and Kyle even manages to dodge his attacks involving illusion. Sentos, on the other hand, is quite surprised, since no one who had previously seen his illusions was able to survive. Kyle regrets that it has come to this point, as the one who trained him in the aesthetic squad training was none other than Sentos himself. He then decides to go on the offensive, beginning to overcome Kyle due to his superior physical skills. He mentions that Kyle's style is quite arrogant, and Kyle says that he learned it from his master. Kyle counterattacks with an explosion stone, but Sentos deflects it back, and upon landing, he advances rapidly against him. Kyle blocks the attack, but on impact, Sentos' sword breaks. Seeing this, the captain retreats, commenting that Kyle possesses an excellent sword. Kyle asks again if he could surrender, as he did not want to kill him. However, Sentos feels he can no longer waste time there and decides to fight with seriousness. Kyle then notices the change in posture and understands that he has no other option but to defeat Sentos. The captain then asks his name, and Kyle introduces himself. Sentos states that he will remember his name, and then they charge at each other. As they clash blades, Kyle is exposed to an attack. His former master advances against him, but surprisingly, Sentos' sword shatters upon colliding with the dragon gem. While Kyle laments, he advances once more, remembering when Sentos was his master, stating that he always fought for his family and for his country, but the country to which he dedicated his life no longer exists. For that reason, Kyle now wields the sword only for himself, feeling free. With those final words in mind, Kyle strikes Sentos, who inevitably falls to the ground. Sentos, surprised and in his final breaths, mentions that Kyle is something extremely strange, since he allowed him to block his attack. Kyle clarifies that he attacked him with all his strength, and if he managed to block it, it was by his own merit. Sentos draws his last breath, while Kyle mentions that he has things to protect, and for that reason, he had to give his all. Regrettably, among those things was him, and thus he says goodbye to his old comrade. On the other side, Mylna's brother is a bit anxious waiting for Sentos, when suddenly, the 5th Division invades the place, searching everything completely. He questions what they think they are doing, but Mylna appears and orders Kirei to capture and interrogate her brother, allowing the use of force if necessary. Upon leaving the room, she reunites with the youths, thanking them for everything they did, but it is Kyle who thanks her for having trusted them. Some time later, already at the royal palace, the little glutton Sildonia loses no time and eats everything in sight, while Serum does not miss the opportunity to flirt with the girls. At that moment, the king appears, and the youths stand up quickly. Mylna informs her father that they were the ones who saved her life. When Kyle prepares to bow, the king stops him, commenting that they are not in public and that he is there to give thanks as a father, not as a king. He says that he already expected this betrayal from Kirei, but he cannot understand why Sentos went against his daughter. He informs them that he will carry out a deep investigation and warns that the matter must not become public. The youths then make an oath, and the king, more at ease, ensures that he will reward them as they deserve. Shortly after, the official report was released to the population, stating that the princes were involved in an attack by beasts. In that attack, Sentos and his soldiers lost their lives, while the prince was seriously injured and taken to a treatment complex. In this way, the truth remained preserved, and finally, the group was officially summoned by the king to receive recognition for saving the princess, receiving medals and all types of honors. Cure was much closer to his goal, which is simply to become a renowned hero, capable of influencing various countries. However, during the night, we discover that the mastermind behind the entire assassination attempt on Mylna was actually her own father, who curses the prince and Sentos for failing their mission. He fears that when he abdicates and Mylna becomes the new queen, his people will no longer remember the king he once was, as his daughter is extremely capable for the position. He curses the fact that he will remain in her shadow. At that very moment, a hooded figure enters the room and captures the king, mentioning that he had warned him previously. When the great invasion occurred, he should have quickly sent aid to the nation of dwarves, but he purposely delayed assistance just to gain more diplomatic advantages. As a consequence, the dwarves were massacred. This defeat resulted in the destruction of the kingdom of Shiddark. The invader clarifies that he does not intend to kill him for something he has not yet done, revealing himself to be Kyle. He remembers the moment when Sentos asked the king for forgiveness for failing the mission, and Kyle pushes the king outward, commenting that the only one capable of ordering Sentos to assassinate the princess would be his own father. He regrets that Sentos could not choose which king to serve. Although Princess Mylna is not entirely pure, she is very intelligent, which makes her a better candidate for the throne than someone who only wants to maintain appearances. Struggling, the king removes the hood and is surprised to see it is Kyle, as Kyle says goodbye by pushing him off the balcony. The king's death that night was attributed to an accidental fall due to alcohol, though to preserve his image, the official cause released was a heart attack. The other youths lament the king's death, unaware that it was Kyle himself who took his life. On the other side, Kyle reunites with Mylna, who reveals she is betrothed to the third heir of the Garga Empire, Prince Mursalam Garga. In the past, both kingdoms disputed the territorial rights of Karen. In the end, Karen was annexed to Shiddark, but in exchange, they secretly arranged a marriage between the prince and her, a marriage of convenience to create a de facto alliance between the empire. Despite this, Mylna now wishes to formally reject the matrimony. She wants Kyle to take charge of informing the mayor of Karen of the cancellation and obtaining his endorsement. Later in his room, Kyle appears concerned, as he has difficulty understanding the intentions of the Garga Empire. Sildonia mentions that it is only a supposition, but it is possible that Karen has other problems besides the empire. The fact that the leader of a vassal city-state did not appear at the capital after the king's passing is quite strange, which makes everything even more suspicious. The princess did not mention this, indicating that something is happening there in Karen. They are waiting for Kyle to investigate and resolve the situation. And Kyle understands that she is testing him, but he feels it is an opportunity to meet the leader of Karen, besides being convenient to maintain distance from the princess. The next day, he meets with Mylna. She comments that he must think she has no heart for sending him on a mission so soon after her father's death. She says the king was a very kind person, though sometimes she did not know if that was true. After the atmosphere shifts, she asks Kyle if he would have any interest in becoming a royal knight, as she would love for him to serve her officially. A nervous Kyle mentions he has many things to do, but Mylna responds that she wants him by her side out of personal desire. Kyle responds only that he cannot do it, but that he will come to her immediately whenever she needs him. Mylna laughs, saying it was just a joke and that it was fun to see his startled expression. She wishes him a safe journey, and Kyle cannot believe the princess was just playing with him. Elsewhere in the castle, a girl asks the princess if she managed to seduce Kyle, and Mylna responds that she sounds very manipulative when put that way. However, she is aware that Kyle's skills will be very useful from now on and feels it is best to keep him by her side. Ruifa disagrees, as he is unaware of her intentions, but Mylna responds that she will always count on his help and that now they must give their best, as she is the one who will lead Shiddark. On the other side, before departing, they take care to equip themselves very well as usual. Kyle tells the vendor that they are now going to Karen and asks for some advice. He responds that the place is a bit complicated and that the Guild of Blacksmiths holds the source of power, and in the past, it was very problematic to trade there. However, after becoming a vassal city of Shiddark, things improved slightly, though he still recommends that he exercise caution. Kyle thanks him for the advice, but before they depart, the old man mentions that Saren might find an excellent sword in Karen, as it is a city with many stories related to weapon. After that, he bids the youths farewell and wishes them good luck on their journey. They begin their new path, and some time later, they finally manage to sight the city-state of Karen. They are surprised because they knew they were in the mountains, but not integrated into them. Sildonia explains that they did not build the city in the mountain, but rather the opposite. The mountains formed around it. She clarifies that Karen was founded at the Temple of Charles as an outpost for defense against demons. High-quality mineral deposits were discovered there, which led people to the land to bring them to the surface. In short, that mountain consists of various minerals. At that very moment above them, some wyverns mounted by Empire soldiers begin to fly, making the youths wonder what they are doing in Karen. The scene seems to have nothing to do with their mission, but a nervous Kyle warns that it is better for them to prepare and move forward. Later, the youths arrive at the Shiddark embassy, where they inform the guard that they need to speak with the ambassadress. While they wait, Urza feels a bit uncomfortable since there are many dwarves in the city, and elves and dwarves do not get along very well. In reality, according to Urza, the reason they do not get along is due to the elves. Then the ambassadress appears, introducing herself as Miranda. Upon seeing her, Kyle stands with his mouth open in surprise, and a slightly annoyed Liz pushes him, causing Kyle to introduce himself with great enthusiasm, which makes the redhead somewhat jealous. Miranda invites them in, while Kyle is surprised to discover that at that time, Miranda was the ambassadress of Karen. Later, upon reading Mylna's letter, she understands they came to speak with the mayor of Karen. Kyle asks if she and the queen are close, and Miranda reveals that she was actually her tutor, in charge of teaching her diplomacy. She bows, thanking them for saving the lives of Mylna and Arkan, and regrettably informs them that the person they came to see is Mayor Vax, but he is bedridden with illness. Therefore, it will be very difficult for them to see him. She tried several times, but the severity of the illness prevents visit. However, by luck, since they are emissaries of Queen Mylna, there is an obligation to receive them, and so she asks them to follow her. While advancing on the mission, Saren, as lecherous as ever, seeks to follow his own path to flirt with some girls, as well as searching for a better sword. On the way, Miranda shows them the embassy of the Garga Empire, explaining that if anything occurs inside, they will not be able to help them. Therefore, they must act with caution. At that exact moment, they encounter the ambassador of Garga, accompanied by Elzerhard Vane, the second best court sorcerer of the Empire. He introduces himself to the group and mentions they were going to meet with the mayor of Karen. Miranda responds that they were as well, and that since Karen is within Shiddark's territory, they should have priority. However, Alzur responds that Karen is an independent city-state. In other words, they do not need Shiddark's permission to make decisions, and the youths become very nervous with the tension between the two. Finally, Miranda proposes they all go together, and Alzur eventually agrees. Asking about the companions, Kyle introduces himself as Queen Mylna's emissary, and Alzur is surprised to realize they are the heroes of Shiddark. He recognizes Kyle by his last name, commenting on the resemblance to his mother, Zeria. Kyle is very surprised, and Alzur reveals that they studied together, saying it is a pleasant surprise to meet her son, and extending his hand amicably. Kyle shakes his hand, and later they meet with the mayor's representatives. Unfortunately, entry is not permitted as he has not yet recovered. Miranda is indignant, as this has been going on for more than 2 months, warning that if recovery takes longer, they must appoint a new mayor. She warns that she will return in 2 days, expecting a solution, and Alzur laments this. As the Garga Empire wishes to establish a good relationship with Karen, she then withdraws, stating she will return on another occasion. Miranda explains to the youths that they must know about the cancellation of the marriage and that Garga possibly wanted to bring Karen into its territory. Given the circumstances, they must replace the mayor with someone more capable of dealing with the Empire. Kyle asks if she has someone in mind, and she points to the best blacksmith in Karen and a member of the guild, Mr. Gazis. Meanwhile, Saren passes through the city in search of a sword, lamenting that he has not managed to flirt. However, he hears the cry of a young woman being cornered by bullies, and he intervenes quickly, knocking one of them down and asking if she is okay, impressed by her beauty. But the supposed young woman reveals herself in reality to be a young man, leaving Saren surprised. The bullies order him to step away, and Saren, upon discovering the truth, decides to leave, apologizing for the interruption. The young boy asks if he is not going to help him, and Saren asks if he has a sister who looks like him. The boy says he does have a sister who looks quite like him. She is 5 years older. And without hesitation, Saren leaps to his aid and defeats the bullies easily. The boy introduces himself as Gage. He is an artificer, which leaves Saren quite surprised. He asks if the boy makes magical objects and who those individuals were. Gage reveals they are debt collectors and that they owe them a lot of money. His boss ended up investing in a magical weapon he is designing, but became very irritated upon learning it would take 10 years to develop. Saren understands that the angelic face is just a facade, but he does not care, as he now wants the boy to introduce his sister to him. Gage already apologizes, stating that she is already married and that he only withheld that earlier to ensure he would help him. Saren is outraged and gives him a thump on the head to keep him sharp. On the other side, Miranda meets with Gazis, who flatly rejects the proposal to become mayor. Miranda insists, but he does not care. He truly does not want to be mayor. The youths notice it will be very difficult to convince him, and Ursa mentions that proposing a dwarf as mayor is absurd, noting it was a good thing the prejudice came from the dwarves and not the elves. At that exact moment, Gage enters the house accompanied by Saren. The youths explain they are with Miranda, and that Gazis is a skilled blacksmith who could forge a sword worthy of Saren. Gage, upon seeing Miranda, recommends the youths follow him since the conversation will be very long. Later, while preparing tea, Kyle asks why Gage looks like a human despite being the son of a dwarf. Gage explains that he is human, and that he and his sister are the result of his mother's previous marriage, who passed away 2 years ago. Kyle observes the plans on the table and is surprised. Gage explains it is the blueprint for an ancient magical weapon he is trying to restore. Kyle remembers his past life, realizing that this young man is the creator of the golem, an autonomous magical weapon whose technology was lost in the fall of Charles. During the time of the Great Invasion, the Empire developed a golem prototype to fight the demons, achieving feats impossible for humans. Sildonia then reviews the plans, commenting that it is based on the Titan, and that the energy conversion mechanism seems functional. Kyle thinks that if he could mass produce it, he would have an overwhelming advantage against the Great Invasion. Therefore, he earnestly asks Gage to finish the golem as soon as possible, but he responds that as much as he wants to do so, he would need at least 10 years to develop it. Kyle responds that this is too much time and needs him to finish within a 1-year deadline. The boy says it is impossible to do that since the development costs would be extremely expensive. However, what the boy does not know is that Kyle is a true big spender. He responds that money is no object, acting like a magnate. He shows a large amount of gold coins, and Gage is moved but warns that he also has other investors. Kyle orders him to tell them he failed and to return all the money. He tells him not to worry, as he will pay for everything, and Gage is touched and happy. He thinks he has finally secured a great sponsor. A little later, a resigned Miranda decides to leave since she could not convince Gazis. Kyle takes advantage of the situation and mentions he has a request to make. He sets aside Miranda's topic, but Gazis anticipates his question, warning that they only accept commissions from regular customers. Gage asks his father to give them an opportunity, as he is sure they will be excellent clients. Gazis decides to look at them, making Ursa very nervous, though he asks her to calm down since he has nothing against elves. She comments, somewhat under her breath, that such an attitude is admirable coming from a dwarf. Saren states that he wants a sword, as his own is not at his level. Gazis realizes it is a sword forged by Dorthos, and very few people can say their swords are not up to their standards. But Gage warns his father that Saren is someone very strong, and that the sword truly is not at his level. Saren says he wants a sword as good as Kyle's, and he shows his sword to Gazis. The blacksmith is impressed upon seeing it in detail. He mentions he never expected to see another sword like that one, and Saren is surprised to hear the word, another. But Gazis says that forging a sword like that right now would be impossible for him, and after returning the sword, he asks them to please withdraw, offering his apologies. Upon exiting the house, they agree that the encounter seemed quite interesting. Regarding the mention of another similar sword, Seldia feels indignant, as she believes it is impossible for another blade like her to exist. At night, they meet at the inn, and Kyle comments to Seldia that in his previous life, Gage failed to develop the golem, perhaps because he ran out of funding and was forced to sell his plans. This would explain how the Empire obtained and developed a prototype during the Great Invasion. Kyle reflects that, considering the Empire's economic resources, it would be highly convenient to ally with them. However, they have revealed too much, and the empire's military power will grow excessively. Furthermore, the cancellation of the marriage is also at stake, which will significantly affect the relationship between both countries. Understanding that any false step could trigger a war even before the great invasion begins. The following day, Urza meets with Kyle and invites him to have lunch together, as he wishes to speak with the son of an old friend. He informs him that both his friends and the ambassador are also invited. Additionally, they could teach him how to traverse the skies using their wyverns. Kyle asks if he is certain, since as far as he knows, this is a state secret. Urza responds that there would be no problem at all, as his mother, Zeria, was the one who devised the techniques for riding a wyvern. He mentions that his mother possessed immense talent, and although he is older, he always aspired to be like her. Kyle mentions that his mother is now an extremely lazy housewife, to which Urza replies that this does not surprise him before saying goodbye and stating that he will wait for them at the embassy of Garga. Following this, Seldia mentions to Kyle that the man possesses an absurd amount of magical power, to the point that she deems him capable of utilizing special level spells one day. Later, Lies and Kyle are at the embassy of Garga, as he decided not to bring his companions because they do not know how to behave at formal dinners. However, before entering the hall, Kyle senses a horrible premonition and runs quickly to the Great Hall, where he is met with the shocking sight of Urza's head placed upon the table. The one who left him in that state was none other than a demon. A brief explanation follows regarding how the demon race controls the other half of the continent of Illinder. Despite being a small minority compared to humans, their individual power is very high. Currently, no nation knows what the demons are planning, as their last attack occurred 300 years ago, causing the humanoids to lower their guard. Very few humans have seen a demon in person. However, Kyle knows them perfectly, the horns on the head and their suffocating presence. The demon attacks Kyle, and he counterattacks, managing to land a blow. Though he is also wounded, he realizes his attack was effective, but is conscious that he was too hasty, as he is currently not carrying Seldia nor wearing his armor. At that moment, the embassy guards gather at the location to investigate the commotion, and seeing itself at a disadvantage, the demon flees. Later, Kyle realizes that the majority of the people who were at the embassy were violently murdered by the demon. The strange thing is that none of the survivors witnessed the assassinations or heard anything at all. On the other hand, Gaj thanks Seldia because, thanks to her knowledge, he has advanced significantly in just one day. It would have taken him months if he had done everything alone. She congratulates him, noting that despite his youth, the fact that he managed to develop all of that is admirable. Then, Lies enters the room to announce that the tea is ready, and upon going to the kitchen, they relax for a moment. Saren asks Gaj if he knows anything about his father, as he spoke of another sword identical to Kyle's. He responds that he was likely referring to Hand, the celestial blade. According to legend, it was forged 2,000 years ago by a dwarven blacksmith of extraordinary skill, and as far as is known, this sword was used by the hero Randolph. He managed to defeat the demon king of his era with that sword. His father used to say that this sword is supposedly located in this city, and if that is true, it might be in the possession of Mayor Vax. Saren is pleased with what he hears, as that sword would be perfect for him. Although Gaj brings him back to reality by stating that the sword is a national treasure and nearly impossible to obtain, Saren falls silent, and Gaj asks if he is listening. However, Saren warns that there are 10 people surrounding the house, and their bloodlust differs entirely from the bullies who were looking for him. Therefore, it is highly possible they are after them. He informs the girls that he will handle the majority, but warns them to remain alert in case any escape. Seldia warns Gaj that he must hide, and as he does so, Saren kicks down the door, knocking out the first assailant. He quickly renders the second one unconscious and warns the rest that it is better for them to surrender if they do not wish to die. Meanwhile, inside the house, a pair of bandits enters, and Urza warns Lies that they must be careful with the daggers, as they are poisoned, and if she is wounded, she will be unable to move. Lies evades the enemy attacks with great ease and soon leaves her opponent incapacitated, thinking that she was too heavy-handed since she wanted to interrogate him. On the other side, Urza suffocates her enemy using the Spirit of Undyne, and upon leaving them out of combat, they tie them up to be able to interrogate them. At that moment, Saren brings another captive to also interrogate him, demanding that they reveal who they are and why they attacked them. It is out of fear that they confess everything soon, or otherwise, he will have a very bad time. He warns that those 2 girls behind him are specialists in torture, and says that the elf is specialized in keeping her victim on the brink of death using potions, in order to prolong their suffering in this way. While the redhead can use any utensil from that house to make him feel extreme pain, and it will be so much that in the end, he will end up kneeling, desperately asking for them to kill him. However, he says that since he is a good person, he would not dare to leave him with those two, and that is why he asks him to be sincere and tell the truth, or else his companions might want to take his place. After this absurd speech here, there is no way not to speak, and the desperate subject reveals that they only hired them to kidnap a boy named Gage. Saren responds that their bloodlust was too evident for a simple kidnapping, but the subject responds that they had orders to kill anyone who interfered. At this, Gage tells the young people that they had heard that the disappearances had increased in the area, although he had not been able to confirm it. Saren then asks the kidnapper what they do with the kidnapped people, but he responds that he has no idea, since his job is only to take him out of the city. Saren is surprised by the fact that they act so recklessly in broad daylight, but he responds that it is because they are outsiders, and no one would complain if they ended up dying. Urza notes that the guards still do not appear, and soon outside the house, another demon prepares a powerful attack. Inside the house, the bandit warns that he has no more information, and right at that moment, Saren screams for everyone to get down, and the explosion destroys the entire place, although everyone is fine. With the exception of the kidnapper, I think he is not doing well at all. The girls then stand up and propose going after the attacker, and at that moment, Saren stops them, warning that it had been a long time since he felt the presence of someone as dangerous as him. Seldia admits that Kyle was right in the decision, since she could notice that that magic was from a demon. Later, they meet at the embassy of Garga. Miranda warns that they find themselves in a very critical situation, which could bring great diplomatic problems. Although, luckily, as Kyle came out wounded, the people of the city thought it was not their fault. The problem is the Empire, since they will claim that the people of Garga are conspiring with the demons, causing diplomatic relations to be shaken. Seldia mentions that the demons have a great destructive power, and if it is them who are behind everything, in the worst case, they could easily erase the entire city from the map. Kyle warns them that, given the circumstances, the main thing now is to confirm if Mayor Vax is related to the kidnappings. At this, Miranda apologizes to the young people for not having told them about this, but it was because they had not been able to confirm the facts until recently. Regrettably, they do not know who is behind the kidnappings, because they knew how to hide their tracks very well, but it is very possible that the mayor is involved. What she cannot understand is why he would ignore these crimes in his own city. But before she says anything else, out of nowhere they inform Miranda that the mayor's house is on fire. Upon arriving at the scene, the young people think that the villains got ahead of them, since a fire exactly at this moment cannot be much of a coincidence. But the scoundrel Saren only laments for not having been able to find the celestial blade that was probably with the mayor. After a time of searching, the young people cannot find any trace of the guy. They think he was in bed, sick, and they discard the idea that it was a demon, since if it had been one, probably the Empire's embassy would have had the same fate. And now the most suspicious of all is the mayor himself, since his whereabouts are now unknown, and if he is responsible for the disappearance, they have a bomb in their hands. It is very logical that he caused a fire to destroy the evidence. Now, the main priority is to ascertain where he is located. Kyle observes Miranda with curiosity, thinking that she was always very reliable and served as a key ally in his past, securing supplies and gathering information, or rather, in his other life. Just then, Gage appears among the ruins, and the young men ask what on earth he is doing in that place when they had told him to wait with the guards. He apologizes to the group, explaining that he was simply worried because his father left because one of the mayor's messengers went after him. Miranda panics while they wonder if it is because he was a candidate for mayor. Miranda is in a state of panic and feels guilty, as she was the one who proposed Gazels as the next mayor. She is desperate because she has put someone very important to her at risk, while Kyle, somewhat confused, wonders why she is so devastated. At that exact moment, he has a memory of his past life in which she was drunk and confessed that she loved someone very much, but that person died because of her. Since then, she decided to close her heart and become much tougher, which makes Kyle understand that the person she loved was Gazel. A little later, she is sleeping while Kyle is by her side, thinking that if her life partner in the previous timeline was Gazel's, he probably died in this incident. He tries to remember something else in search of information and manages to recall that when he was taking Miranda to her room, she lamented not having found a secret underground passage earlier. Now, with this information in mind, Kyle decides to get up and put his plan into practice. Informing the young people that he is going to the mayor's house, he asks Urza to accompany him, as he will need her magic. Saren also intends to join because he does not plan on giving up on finding the celestial blade. The man only cares about the sword. Liz also decides to go, because obviously she cannot allow Urza to be alone with her sweetheart. Therefore, they ask Gage to stay in charge of Miranda so that she does not leave the embassy. Meanwhile, on the other side of that underground passage, there is an old man who is dead, or half dead, and another is also on that same path, closer to the other side than this one. Meanwhile, at the surface, Kyle explains to the young people that there must be a secret underground passage in that place and they must find it. Urza asks why he needs her, and he responds that she is there to clear the way, as he wants her to use her gnome spirit to find the passage. She tells him that to maintain that spirit, she will need an enormous amount of magical power. And the worst part is that he is asking her to search for a passage that might not even exist, especially in the middle of all those cursed ruins. Kyle, very serious, puts his hand on her shoulder and informs her that this is indeed what he wants. Urza tells him that she will exhaust all her magical power in a short time and asks if he at least has an idea of where to start looking. However, the rascal responds that she has no reason to worry because magical power can be recovered with mana potions. Urza asks if he understands the gravity of the matter, since although potions can recover her magical energy, they have a horrible taste. Kyle knows this, but he begs her to do it because their time is running out. The others also begin to offer moral support, making Urza feel a bit embarrassed. But in the end, she accepts and leaves like a true grumpy old woman. Next, Kyle asks Saren if he is sure that the demon he saw is a man. Saren responds that although he did not see him completely through the window, he is almost 100% sure it is a man. This complicates the situation significantly, as it means there are two demons around, since the other one Kyle encountered was a woman. Thus, night falls, and finally, poor Urza, after suffering through those disgusting potions, manages to find the passage. The group enters it, and as they advance, Kyle asks them to be very careful because they could run into some demons. At this, Saren comments that although he did not know the demons, upon seeing one he felt how dangerous they were, as it reminded him of the moments when his mother became serious. Liz warns that she will report them to Layla when she sees her, but Kyle responds that it is best for her and Urza to stay back because moving forward could be very dangerous. However, the girls refuse and make it clear that they intend to accompany him wherever he goes. Kyle thinks that at least on this occasion, Saren is on his side. In the worst-case scenario, if a demon appeared, they could protect them. Therefore, they continue advancing until they reach a room. They end up stumbling upon a forbidden magic spell. Seldia examines it and warns that, from what she can observe, it is a ritual to obtain magical power by sacrificing many lives. Upon seeing the individual on the table, Kyle quickly realizes that it is the official who attended to them in the mayor's stead. Noticing a pile of corpses beside him, he assumes they must be the citizens who disappeared from Kara. Kyle had seen this before. However, Seldia mentions that whoever did this prioritized quality over quantity, as this magic circle drains all magical energy very slowly, which helps consume a higher quality of it. The detail lies in the catalyst, which is quite poor. It could explode at any moment, as it would not be able to withstand all the magical energy accumulating around it. And if it explodes, the outcome will not be good at all. It could easily destroy half the city. The group is alerted since they cannot allow this to happen, but Seldia warns that someone is approaching. Everyone hides as the demons arrive at the ritual room. The male demon asks the girl why she remains silent. Noting she has been quite quiet, she tells him she hates having to follow instructions from a human, and above all, having to collaborate with them. Furthermore, she did not like that they had to massacre all the personnel at the embassy. He responds that while that idea does not please him either, it is the best way to collaborate. Moreover, the massacre at the embassy was a request from their collaborator. He did everything possible to kill the fewest number of people, just as they were ordered. The girl mentions that not drawing attention was also part of the orders, though he responds that this too was a request from their collaborator, who asked for a massacre so he could continue with the kidnappings elsewhere. Additionally, he recalls why they are doing all of this. It is to obtain what the Demon King yearns for. There is no other solution but to work with their collaborator, and everything they do is out of loyalty to their king. After disintegrating the corpse on the table, he announces he is going to get some fresh air because the place is quite depressing. The girl then leaves, while the group breathes a sigh of relief for not having been discovered. Seldia mentions it is very curious that they are killing as few people as possible. She had heard that the current Demon King was more moderate, albeit somewhat eccentric. Kyle warns that now is the best time to look for Gozzles and Vax, and after exploring the hideout a bit, they manage to find Gozzles, and with him is Mayor Vax. He asks what on earth they are doing in that location. But the young people are the ones who ask what he is doing there, since he was supposed to be sick, or at least that is what he claimed. Vax quickly realizes they are the cursed messengers from Garga. On one side, the Empire wants to invade them, and Garga tries to control them, and he does not intend to accept this and will do whatever is necessary to protect Kara. It is then that the group asks what on earth he is talking about, since he was the one kidnapping and sacrificing citizens. Vax responds that he did all of this to protect Kara, which they cannot understand until Gozzles reveals that very soon nothing will be left in the mines of Kara. He warns the mayor that it is not the time to continue hiding this. The mines are the city's main resource, and when they run out, Kara will have no more value. There will be no more jobs, and the blacksmiths will disperse, making Garga's control even greater. Vax asserts once more that he will not allow this to happen, and will do everything in his power to protect his realm, even if he must sacrifice his citizens. Seldia notices that the old man has a terminal illness, and Kyle assumes the demons took advantage of this weakness. One of the demons asks Kyle not to accuse them of taking advantage of anyone. After all, they merely offered a deal. Meanwhile, at the embassy, Miranda gets out of bed, and Gage asks her to calm down, as Kyle and the others are going to find her father. Back in the underground, the demon informs them that the zone was created to gather minerals from the subsoil, and that by using the same magic, they can reunite them again, which is why they were performing sacrifices. Kyle asks what they would obtain in return, and the demon responds that they only want the sword used in the past to defeat a former demon king, because the current demon king desires it. Kyle questions how they know about the sword, and he reveals that his initial mission was to collect information about humans, starting with Kara, since they created numerous weapons to torment demons. During the investigation, he learned of the city's situation, and offered the deal to the mayor to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He would obtain the sword and also manage to get the information. Kyle, revolted, asks if that was the plan, calling them evil. The other demon appears, stating that he is talking too much. Kyle stays on guard, and the female demon asks them to stop to avoid a confrontation. But her companion asserts that now that they know of their existence, they must eliminate them before leaving. The mayor panics, asking if they didn't want the sword, and begs them not to leave, asking what would become of Kara without them. Saren approaches the old man and asks him to calm down, while Kyle warns the mayor that he cannot believe the words of a demon, revealing that the catalyst they are using is at its limit. They will not be able to control it, and the demon laughs, saying that even if it destroyed the entire city, it would not be their problem. The mayor curses them, and Saren puts him to sleep. The girls go to face the female demon, while Kyle and Saren face the other. Before the fight, Kyle asks Saren to stay with the girls, but he responds that he has other things to do, so he will leave all the work to him. Immediately after, the rogue leaves with Gozzles. The demon begins to release his great power, while his companion warns the girls that it is better for them to leave, as she does not intend to hold them back. They respond that they have not fallen for cheap tricks, but the demon retorts, saying she does not need tricks against such weak beings. Offended, the girls attack, but they are sent flying, one after the other. Seldia asks Saren if he is not going to help them, since the result is obvious. Saren responds that the demon has no intention of killing them, so this will serve as their first training against demons. But he asks something more important. He asks if she recognizes an object he borrowed from the mayor, and Seldia explains that it is a special magic item. He chooses a magical object linked to its power, and the boy understands they are hiding something, since the mayor looked at a very specific place when they mentioned the sword. He goes there and uses the crystal to examine the area. Meanwhile, poor Kyle is struggling, as the demon gives him no openings and does not allow him to get close. At a certain point, Kyle advances, but the demon pushes him away easily, and Kyle falls to the ground, already weak. The demon charges a great power and warns that he will leave his head intact so they can bury him. Saren, in turn, obtains the celestial blade and announces it to the demons with great excitement, making them look at him. Kyle and the girls take advantage of the distraction and attack. Lies and Urza finally manage to scratch the demon, which makes her furious. However, she hears her companions cry and, looking over, notices he is on the ground. Kyle has cut off one of his horns and threatens to pulverize it if he does not stay quiet, as he knows that a demon's pride resides in their horn. Those who do not possess them are considered inferior. Saren approaches, praising his new acquisition. The demon demands the sword, but he responds, "No way," and the demons promise revenge. However, Kyle ends up lowering his sword and proposes a truce. He says there are wounded and sick companions, and he does not want to continue the fight now. His plan is a duel in 3 days, in that same place. If the demons win, they take the sword and the horn back. Saren even tries to protest, but Kyle does not let him speak. He imposes his condition. If the humans win, the demons must provide information about how many of them are in human territory. The demon ends up accepting, and after creating an exit, warns that he will wait for them in 3 days. The young people then return to the city, where Miranda runs when she sees that the love of her life, Gozzles, is alive. Little Gage cries upon seeing that his father is well, and Kyle interrupts the touching scene of the lovebird. Later, at the embassy, Gozzles reveals that the mayor was not always like this. He always cared about the citizen, but the means were wrong. Kyle asks when he learned of the disappearances, and Gozzles says he found out about a month ago. He asked the mayor to stop, but was completely ignored. Miranda reprimands him, as he could have died, but Gozzles responds that, as Kara's best blacksmith, this was essential. However, the mayor went so far as to threaten Gage and Miranda if he did not cooperate, which is why he distanced himself to avoid involving them. Kyle understands, and Gozzles asks about the celestial blade. Kyle responds that since Saren found it, he will keep it himself. Gozzles disagrees, as it is a national treasure, but Kyle enters his negotiator mode and reminds him that they saved his life, Miranda's, and his son's, so he will have to accept it whether he likes it or not. Additionally, he makes an indecent proposal and shows a piece of mithril, surprising Gozzles. Kyle explains that Kara has no more minerals. Kyle explains that they can provide all the necessary mithril, as his objective was to find a blacksmith capable of working with the material, and Gozzles is the best on the continent. He suggests that Gozzles might one day forge something superior to the celestial blade. Gozzles hesitates but eventually accepts. Kyle states that the absence of the sword will not affect Kara, though Gozzles insists it is special. However, when Miranda mentions she does not recall any celestial blade being in Kara, he is reminded of who holds authority in that relationship. Kyle then presents some plans and asks if he can create what is depicted. Gozzles says that with a mithril, it will take only 3 days, but Kyle demands it be done in 2, as he needs to win the duel. Gozzles complains but heads to the workshop regardless, asking Miranda to look after Gage. Kyle then gathers with the girls and admits that the demon was holding back. He warns that the demons are on another level, and tells them they do not have to fight if they do not want to. They refuse to give up and swear to defeat the female demon. Kyle laments this, as he had wanted Saren to fight, but the girls are too motivated, leaving him with little choice. Finally, he meets with Saren, who comments that if things proceed this way, he will not be able to test his new sword. However, Kyle reveals that if necessary, Saren must attack the demons from behind to finish them off. Saren responds that such a move is very dirty and quite dishonorable for a duel. Though Kyle reveals it is all part of his plan, Saren calls him a disgusting person. Nonetheless, Kyle asks him not to give it so much importance. Furthermore, that demon did not seem to care much about the sword, so taking possession of his horn was essential. Saren understands that Kyle wanted the horn from the beginning. However, he tells him that these demons are much stronger and feels that in a fair fight, they will not be able to defeat them. Kyle responds that this is precisely why he asked for 3 days. Now, in the underground cavern, Kyle is with Seldia, who is controlling the flow of mana from the stone so it does not destroy the city. Kyle asks if he can truly transfer all the power from this magic stone to the heart of the divine dragon. She confirms this, but warns that the transfer will take about 2 days. Before leaving, Kyle asks if it is true that he could use terraforming magic to extract mithril, though Seldia reveals this is impossible because no minerals remain in the zone. Even if the demons had succeeded, it would be practically impossible to do so without the city disappearing. Seldia then begins the transfer process, and the days pass. Seldia extracts the energy while the girls train and Saren meditates calmly. Kyle inspects the progress of his project with goggles. 3 days pass, and at night, Seldia complains because Saren keeps her awake with his snoring. Additionally, she asks how he can be so calm when the duel is the next day, though Kyle asks her to relax, as it might be for the best, since losing is not an option, and they need information about the demons and the next Demon King to stop the Great Invasion. He remains focused. Finally, the expected day arrives, and the young people are in the underground cavern. They are waiting for the demons, and while there, they relax with a picnic. Kyle asks if the girls have a plan in mind, and Urza responds that she is not naive enough to claim victory. Although a win is possible, the demons then appear, and Kyle complains because they had been waiting for a long time. The demons observe in disbelief, seeing that this group of idiots was having tea while waiting for them. They finally begin to pack their things, and Kyle asks to move to a better location. He argues the current space is too small, and the demon responds that he actually thought the same thing, allowing the humans to choose where they want to die. His companion asks if he is certain, as this gives them an advantage, but he responds that it does not matter because humans are inferior and cannot stand against them. Kyle and the male demon depart together for another location while the others remain in the cavern. Seldia stays with them so that if anything happens in the cavern, she can inform Kyle. Saren informs the demon that he will only be a spectator and will hand over the sword if they win the battle. The demon accepts and warns the girls that on this occasion, she does not intend to hold back, recommending they surrender if they value their lives and making it clear she only does this to obtain the sword. The combat then begins. The demon quickly advances against Lies, who manages to block with difficulty. Urza joins the combat, utilizing her salamander to attack with fire, although Lise ends up caught in the crossfire and hides behind a pillar to avoid being affected. Sildonia comments that she does not like how things are unfolding. The demon lunges toward Urza, but she manages to stop the enemy using the gnome. Lise takes advantage of this opportunity to attack her. However, the demon counterattacks, which leaves Lise surprised. Despite the demon only making slight contact, Lise felt as though she were on the verge of fainting. Sildonia then asks Saren if he is certain he will not intervene, noting that the difference in power between them is abysmal. He responds that he would love to get involved, but he knows those two would soon want to kill him if he did. Furthermore, he thinks they are not doing too poorly. It is at that moment, in just an instant, that the girls completely change their attitude and work together with perfection. They utilize the gnome to block the demon's vision, and through this distraction, Lise connects a powerful strike before immediately continuing her relentless assault. The demon is surprised by their synchronization. Lise advances once more with full force, landing a significant punch. The demon is heavily impacted, yet the girls do not stop their advancement. On the other side, Kyle reaches his destination and informs the demon that it is time to begin. However, the narrative returns to the girls, showing that the demon has now become serious. She advances against the girls with all her might, but the girls do not intend to make things easy for her. After sending the demon flying, Urza advances with Salamander, launching a potent fire attack that hits the demon directly. The girls celebrate their victory, thinking that it is impossible for her to survive after receiving such an attack. Saren comments that the battle ended quite easily. However, Sildonia responds that she would not think that way. Suddenly, the flames dissipate, and the girls go on high alert. More surprisingly, the demon asks Lise how she was able to dodge her attack when she is much faster than they are. Lise says she does not know, but if she had to say, it is because her movements were quite predictable. She keeps attacking in the same manner, which suggests that she had never risked her life in a battle before. In the middle of the combat, the girls begin to give their enemy a lesson in battle. The logic behind this is essentially teaching the enemy how to kill them. It is a sensational turn of events. Urza then explains that what she lacks is experience, and the demon is surprised to realize that she becomes very angry very easily, and by doing so, she fails to react correctly. The demon feels ashamed and comments that they are entirely right. The girls prepare to continue the combat, although surprisingly, the demon calms down and admits defeat. She had underestimated them, thinking she could not lose if she fought seriously, but she realized she was mistaken. She states that she is not afraid to die, but the Dark Lord ordered her to return alive, and she must fulfill that order at any cost, since there is a possibility she might lose if she continues the battle. She says she does not intend to keep fighting and asks what they will do with her now that she has surrendered. The girls say the best thing would be to let her leave, although Saren reproaches them because they cannot leave a demon free. The girls remember that Kyle wanted information, so they ask if there are more demons infiltrated in human territory. The demon tells them that only they were sent, and if they happen to find other demons, she is not aware of them, as they likely went of their own accord. She then asks if there is anything else they want to ask. While the girls are unsure what to do, the demon comments that if they were men, she would not mind sleeping with them. She also mentions that any man would do, and it could even be that man named Kyle. The girls become embarrassed, and Lise quickly shouts for her not to approach her man, ordering her to leave at once, while Saren simply thinks that those two are idiots. Before departing, the demon asks the girls for their names, and they introduce themselves. The demon then introduces herself to the girls as Yuliga and continues on her way. However, out of nowhere, Saren approaches her, asking her to allow him to test his new sword. Sildonia comments that in her time, demons were not like this. Meanwhile, Kyle has prepared for combat alongside his own demon opponent. He asks Kyle if he has his horn, and Kyle promptly shows it, letting him know that if he manages to defeat him, he will return it. Kyle thinks that the strength of this demon lies in long-range attack, so he must take charge of closing the distance. He quickly applies buffs and advances toward the demon. He is surprised to see that he cannot dodge the attack, and the demon takes the hit directly before immediately counterattacking at point-blank range, leaving Kyle severely wounded. The demon mentions that he allowed himself to be hit as a punishment for having lost his horn, and Kyle realizes that this demon is completely different from the one he faced 3 days ago. Now, he is showing his true power. The demon reveals that in the war 300 years ago, he finished off countless individuals who showed faces of terror, and that this is the moment to end him. Kyle, for his part, can do nothing more than dodge while searching for the perfect opportunity to close the distance. However, when he finally manages to do so, the demon repels his attack very easily. Realizing that he is no match for him, Kyle begins to play dirty, threatening to destroy the horn. The demon responds that as much as he appreciates his horn, it is not worth losing his life over it. Kyle already expected this, so he throws the horn and advances against the demon, pinning him against the wall. Upon destroying the wall, they enter a lava zone, but the demon does not fall into it. After disarming Kyle, he asks if this was perhaps his ace up his sleeve. He praises his insight and determination but notes that the difference in their power is abysmal, asking him to accept his death once and for all. Kyle responds that he already knew of this difference and perfectly understands the terror that demons instill with their great power. It is for this very reason that Kyle is more than prepared to defeat them. In a swift movement, he throws a flask at the demon, drenching him with a very strange liquid. The enemy wonders what on earth that is, and Kyle reveals that it is a very potent adhesive. Once applied, it is impossible to remove. Furthermore, he has another surprise in store and attacks the demon with chains, completely imprisoning him. The demon tries to break free, but Kyle warns that it is futile. As those chains were made to resist even magma, they are mithril chains. Now that the opponent is immobilized, Kyle expects him to fulfill his part of the deal and tell him everything he knows. First, he wants to confirm if it is true that the Demon King does not want conflict with humanity. The demon responds that Ruiza is the daughter of the previous Demon King, and that she had made a contract with the humanoids of the past. For that reason, they wanted the Celestial Blade. At that moment, another very strange, camouflaged creature appears at the location. Merely listening to the conversation, Kyle mentions that humanoids and demons are bitter enemies, and therefore, he finds it hard to believe that the demons would view this agreement favorably. The demon then confirms that Kyle is correct. There are many factions that are against it, and they were collecting information for the warmongering faction. However, Queen Ruiza is not a supporter of this operation, and as much as various factions oppose her, her power is absolute, making it impossible for them to remove her from the throne. Kyle then asks one last question and recommends caution with the answer. He asks if in the line of succession there is a black-winged demon who does not possess a horn. The demon responds that this is impossible, as the pride of the race resides in their horns, and a demon without a horn would never inherit the throne. Furthermore, he is unaware of the existence of a black-winged demon with enough power to be king. Kyle comments that this means he still does not know who the next demon king will be, and he prepares to end his life, as he no longer has any utility. Desperate to save his own skin, the demon mentions that perhaps Queen Ruiza knows something about it, and that he could secure an audience with her for him. Kyle ponders this, and eventually accepts sparing his life, but warns him not to try and deceive him. However, the demon thinks Kyle is naive and has thrown away his victory. The strange camouflaged creature attacks Kyle, but he cuts it in two with extreme ease, mentioning to the demon that he knew the creature was there without even needing to turn around. Kyle says it is a pity, because if the demon had kept his word and taken him to the Demon King, he would have lived a little longer. He reveals that he already knew about his secret weapon, those creatures responsible for the massacre at the embassy. They are invisible magical beings conjured by his magic, and Kyle knows perfectly well that he can control several of them. The shocked demon asks how Kyle knew his secret, and Kyle confesses that he recognized him upon seeing him. Although the demon does not know it, they have met before, and he calls him by the name Garnias. Kyle mentions that he finally understood something that had been bothering him. During the Great Invasion, he felt an absolute terror for the demons and their blind loyalty to their lord, things he does not perceive in this moment. Although they remain strong, he no longer fears them. Garnias asks who on earth he is. Kyle simply throws him into the lava since he no longer has any utility. Kyle is remarkably formidable. He handles the situation in the most effective way possible. While Garnias is burning, Kyle comments that in the past, the demon killed many of his friends, but in a way, he is grateful to him for revealing the Demon King's whereabouts. Even though Garnias refused to disclose information about the king, Kyle's suicide attack in the past would not have worked without the details Garnias let slip. As a parting gift, Kyle reveals that although he is in the magma, the mithril will take about a day to melt. Since the chains have already been there for roughly half a day, if he survives for at least another 12 hours, he might live to tell the tale. Kyle then departs, leaving Garnias agonizing in the lava. On the other side, Yuliga already considered herself dead, but it is revealed that Saren actually took care of one of the invisible assassins for her. He comments that he does not know what that thing was, but it was going to kill her. Yuliga understands that a trap was set for her and that the creature had orders to end her life. The girls reprimand Saren for initially attacking her, but he responds that he actually saved her. Upon seeing the creature, Sildonia comments that it is a repugnant life form. Yuliga then explains that for a demon to lose their horn to a humanoid is the greatest possible humiliation, and Garnias likely wanted to silence her before she could report everything to the Demon King. The girls comment that appearances can be deceiving, and Saren remarks that he possesses many virtues while thinking to himself that it is better not to reveal he only attacked to kill a demon, only changing targets at the last instant because he noticed something very strange. The demon then says she owes him one, and the opportunistic Saren remembers that she had offered to sleep with someone earlier. He says he would be delighted. However, Lise ruins his entire fantasy. The demon smiles and says goodbye, doubting their paths will cross again. The girls hope to face her once more, aware that the next battle will be much more difficult. Saren laments the outcome, as he had orders from Kyle to end her life, but seeing that the girls were happy with the interaction, he lets it go. Sometime later, Saren practices with his new sword, eager to test it in real combat. Kyle asks what he thinks of the demons. Saren responds that although they are strong, they are not that frightening. Initially, he let himself be swayed by rumors, but the more he dealt with them, the less powerful they seemed. Kyle sighs, seeing that they both think alike. Demons are like them, only slightly more powerful. Kyle understands why Saren did what he did. He had written orders not to let any demon escape, but Kyle knows his friend, and if Yuliga were truly a danger, Saren would not have let her go. This leads to the reflection that 300 years of peace have not changed the mentality of either side. The girls reunite with them, now recovered, and later, Kyle goes to meet Gassos while Gode takes the opportunity to speak with Sildonia about ancient technology. Gassos presents Kyle with a pair of mithril scabbards as a parting gift, since the group is departing the following day. Outside, Gode asks Sildonia if she would like to stay there with him forever. This was a proposal Sildonia did not expect. She responds that she needs to go with Kyle. Goad insists, wanting to learn more, but she makes it clear she cannot. Furthermore, she has already taught him what was necessary. With Kyle as a benefactor, he will certainly complete the golem soon. Goad eventually accepts, lamenting that he will have to renounce many things. Sildonia does not understand, but Kyle leaves the house, and after saying their goodbyes, they depart. Goad wonders how Kyle is not satisfied with Lise and Urza, still wanting to stay with Sildonia as well. Goad seems to have a very wrong view of Kyle. Later, Kyle meets with Miranda, who informs him of Vax's death. On his deathbed, the mayor confessed the entire truth regarding the disappearances in the city, considering the case resolved. However, the problem of the massacre at the Empire's embassy remains. The Empire will blame the Kingdom of Sirgos, complicating everything, especially with the cancellation of Queen Mylna's engagement. Miranda then reveals that Gossos was elected the new mayor of Karen, which surprises Kyle. She explains the arrangement. They handle the paperwork so that Gossos can dedicate himself solely to the forge. Kyle feels greatly relieved by this. Miranda thanks him deeply, on behalf of everyone, for having saved so many lives. Kyle takes the opportunity to ask if she was behind the entire incident regarding Goad and the money. This surprises her, and Kyle details his theory. Gossos distanced himself due to Vax's threats. Since Miranda was unaware of the ongoing situation, she devised a plan to reunite them, and Goad entered the fray seeking investors. She did not act directly but instead informed certain individuals about the business opportunity, waiting for the momentum to build so she could gain Gossos's trust by rescuing Goad. Miranda congratulates Kyle on his deduction, but asks if he has any proof. Kyle admits he does not, but he knows perfectly well the types of schemes she is capable of. Therefore, if she feels guilty, he wants to ask a favor. Although it appears to be another form of blackmail, he makes it clear that the development of the golem Goad is working on must be kept in total secret. No nation should know, not even the Kingdom of Sirgos. Miranda responds that if it is only for that, there is no problem at all. However, if Goad completes the project, it will eventually be impossible to hide forever, and she will need to report it. Kyle tells her not to worry, as she only needs to keep the secret for at least 3 years. She eventually accepts, and Kyle asks her not to make such a face, as he prefers to see her with a large smile. Miranda asks how he can be so bold after threatening her, and Kyle simply laughs, commenting that she looks much better that way, as in his past life, she limited herself only to surviving. Curious, Miranda asks if they have met elsewhere, but he responds that they have only just met in person. The next day, the young group continues their journey back to Sirgos to report everything that occurred. Saren laments not having tested his sword, while the girls are quite nervous, knowing they will be bombarded with questions. Kyle attempts to calm them, stating that if the demons are plotting something and an invasion truly occurs, the humanoids cannot be divided or the consequences will be catastrophic. Their goal now is to unite everyone, though whether this was meant to calm anyone is uncertain, as it seems more likely to increase their nervousness. Meanwhile, in Sirgos, Mylna is informed that the Empire is summoning 3 princes to the imperial capital. If nothing is done, diplomatic relations will worsen. Mylna is aware of this and summons August and Kieran for a mission. On the other side, Surya hopes her son and the others are well. When she is greeted by Layla, she mentions that she needs to depart and will send her regards if she crosses paths with the boys. Surya wishes her luck, as the path is treacherous. Layla expresses her gratitude and asks Surya to take care of herself, noting she is not in her best moment while touching her stomach, implying she is pregnant. On the road, the group encounters August and Kieran and departs in the carriage. Kieran informs Kyle that they have a sudden mission. They must go to the imperial capital to testify that a demon caused the massacre at the embassy. Since Kyle was the one who faced one of them, he must go personally to cooperate. Kieran reinforces that the success of this mission is vital for peace, placing everything in Kyle's hands, which leaves him quite nervous. Although August tries to relax the atmosphere, it becomes clear that he and Kieran have differences in their approaches, leaving Kyle in a very uncomfortable moment, wishing to exit the carriage. After a long 5-day journey enduring this tension, he finally arrives at the Empire. Kyle is quite anxious, wondering if he will be able to meet him. Meanwhile, in the imperial capital, three brothers discuss the events in Karen. Suspicions arise that Sirgos is behind everything, as they find it impossible for a human to be strong enough to defeat a demon. One of them asks Mazer's opinion on the affront to the authority of the Empire of Garga. Mazer stands and asks his brothers not to exaggerate. He heard that a hero was born in Sirgos and possibly defeated the demon. Questioned about the proof, Mazer says it is merely a hunch, but his hunches tend to be quite accurate. At night, the young group attends the banquet, and Sildonia takes the opportunity to eat as many sweets as possible. Saren finally bumps into a girl, and later, while Kyle goes out for some air, a very lively girl approaches and begins talking to him. However, upon seeing Mazer approaching, she flees. Mazer jokes with Kyle, saying he does not waste time, and asks if he interrupted something. Kyle says he did not and asks how he can help. Mazer goes straight to the point and asks Kyle if he wants to work for him. Kyle expresses his gratitude, but says he does not consider himself worthy of serving him. However, Mazer responds coldly that if he refuses, perhaps he should kill him right there. He asserts that Kyle possesses absurd potential, and if he is not by his side, it is better that he does not remain alive. Kyle is quite surprised by this declaration while Mazer awaits a new response. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, Uliga meets with her master and asks for forgiveness for not finding the celestial blade and for the death of Garnias. She says she is willing to accept any punishment, and the current demon queen, Ruiza, observes her with an imposing gaze. This concludes our summary. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment humanoids below so we know you watched until the end. That is all. Stay with God. Thanks, goodbye, and see you in the next video.